Hey yogis and yoginis, Ashley Josephine here. Today I want to talk to you and hopefully teach you about binds. So if you are a regular yoga practitioner, or even if you're not, when you go to yoga classes, sometimes you hear yoga teachers say, and now you have the option to take a half bind, or now we're going to work into binds. And oftentimes that is referring to the shoulders and binding a hand around the hand, the arm around a body part like the torso or the leg, and it involves a lot of pretzel-y, twisty type movements, and it can be really difficult, not just because it is difficult, but also because it requires a certain amount of knowledge about moving the body in different ways, and it ends up putting us in these constricted postures where we're kind of pulling everything in together and almost kind of going inside a little bit. But at the same time, that often compromises the space that we're creating in any given posture. And I'll walk you through this and show you some examples in different postures here in a moment. But my intention for this video today is to teach you a little bit about the foundation of where this bind is happening, what is the movement going on in the shoulder, and what can we be looking for or acknowledging in our own body to understand, hey Mandy, to understand whether binds are going to work for us in a particular posture, where we need to start, what are we starting with as our baseline, and where we can realistically go based on what our body, our structure, our muscles are telling us on any given day. So I recommend if you have a strap or a belt, you've got one handy, and if you know that you're going to be binding or if that's something you want to work on in your practice, feel free to always grab a strap for class and have it close by so that when you want to explore some of those postures, you can use the strap and you're not forcing yourself to go further than is what would be comfortable for your shoulder. The shoulder is a very delicate structure and we want to take care of it the best we can. We can definitely work with it and through it, but we don't want to force it. So let's look at and talk about internal and external rotation. Internal rotation is when your shoulder is rotating inward towards the center line of your body. So that's where my hand would be facing out away from me. External rotation is the exact opposite. Now the shoulder is going to rotate behind me towards my back away from the center of the body. And now my palm is going to face out away from me in this way. So the very first thing that you want to do when you're looking at adding or practicing binds, what is your internal and external rotation baseline? How much internal and external rotation do you have in your shoulder? And we're looking at shoulder mobility only here. So not rotating your shoulder inward and then hunching down the rest of your body to get even more rotation out of that, because we won't necessarily have that mobility or the ability to move in that way when we're putting ourselves in different postures. So I want you to just take a moment to look at what is your base range of motion for your internal rotation and for your external rotation. Now, if you're working with a shoulder injury, that might be compromised a little bit, and that's something that we're going to have to take into account. Binds might not be the best option for you if you're working through some type of rotator cuff tear, because we need those tiny muscles in the rotator cuff to help us internally and externally rotate the shoulder. And you might also find that one shoulder is able to internally and externally rotate at a greater range of motion than the other shoulder, which is completely normal and is just going to have to do with how we're using our shoulder and our arms on one side of the body versus the other side of the body in our daily life and our daily movement patterns. So if you're dominant in your right hand, you might be using your right hand more and not using your left hand in the same way, and so your muscles are developed differently on both sides of the body and you have more range of motion on one side than the other. So I'm going to start us in an extended side angle. This is a common place where we see binds. So extended side angle, let's start on the left side here. My left foot's going to be forward. I'm going to come down into my extended side angle and reach my right arm overhead. The very first thing that you'll hear is a teacher often offering the option of a half bind. And that half bind looks like this top hand coming around, binding around the torso. So what you're actually doing is you're taking the arm back behind you, you're finding some internal rotation so that the hand can kind of come out to the side and rest out to the side. You need that internal rotation to kind of rotate your hand out that way so that you can bring your hand back here. But once you get there, Now you want to start looking at some more external rotation so that you can pull the shoulder back, because you can see that internal rotation puts us in a position where our shoulder now comes down. But I want to create as much space as I can in the torso in my extended side angle, so now I'm going to have to look at rotating, and it's not just happening from the shoulder, right? It's subtle in the shoulder, that external rotation. That would be about the difference between here and here. But if we're down here, that means we've used other parts of our body to help us rotate the arm in this way. So now we're going to have to look at the hips, what's happening at the hips, what's happening with the torso. Are we rotating our spine or twisting our spine a little bit to get here? So anytime that we're moving into a bind, we still want to keep space in the shape, in the sides of the body, in the chest, rather than kind of hunching down, because that's not really helping us create. It's really causing us to destroy in a way, if that makes sense. So we want to keep everything open. That's the half bind. Now if you want to go into the full bind, you take this bottom hand and you let that hand hang so that the palm is facing away from you. Again, we're starting with that internal rotation. Then you can bend the elbow, reach the hand back behind you, and I'm going to turn it around so that you can see this. This hand reaches back behind you, and then you can grab hold of the fingertips. Now that might not be possible for you, so you might use a strap to help you out from the beginning, and you might be close and maybe you just grab hold of your leg or your shirt or something like that, even if you can't touch. I don't really care if you touch your hands together. I'm much more interested in finding the correct space and structure for your own body so that you can continue to breathe freely in a bind like this. So when we're like this, again, you can see how we're kind of like hunching forward, and I see so many students like this, and they think that they're binding. Well, yes, you've bound your hands together, you've completely compromised the rest of the posture. So now we have to feel really strong in the legs. We have to get a little bit of that external rotation in the shoulder, both shoulders if we can. Lift yourself up and reach your chest forward so that we've got all of that space, and we're creating all of that space for the breath to inhabit, which is really important because that's where we start to find growth. If we're closing in all of those spaces, we're not able to grow. We're just kind of breathing really shallow rather than breathing deep and freely and seeing progress and growth in our posture and our practice. So that's one example of a bind, and using those ideas of the internal and external rotation, using other structures of the body to help you open up and free up that space. I also want to show you a bind in a twist, which is a little bit more complicated because we're already twisting and then we're going to add in the shoulder binding as well. So let's start with my right foot forward this time. I'm going to come into a twist. I'm going to keep my back knee down, and I recommend that you start practicing this with your back knee down as well if you're still trying to get the hang of it. Then you don't have to worry about balancing in a full crescent lunge when you're moving into and out of twists. So I'm going to come into a supported crescent twist here. And the first step is just to open up the arms, which gets you a little bit deeper into the twist. I'm going to turn around so that you guys can see this a little bit better. So from this open arm position, I'm going a little bit deeper into the twist. And if you're not able to breathe steadily here, then I recommend you stay here until you can get to the point where you can breathe steadily. So you can continue to take big, long inhales and exhales. Once you master that, then you can go on to the next step, which is finding that internal rotation in the shoulder and reaching back behind for the half bind. So you're bringing the back of your hand to your opposite hip. Now this bottom hand is going to internally, the shoulder is going to internally rotate. You can lower yourself down a little bit and then grab hold of your fingertips. But again, you can see how that internal rotation causes me to hunch forward a little bit. So I have to go back and externally rotate to open as I lift myself up, open up through the chest, and come even deeper into the twist in the spine, and be able to breathe steadily and talk to you normally at the same time. So this is a bound twist. And I'll turn around and show it to you on the other side so that you can see what it looks like with the hands behind me, right? Just like this. And again, you might need to start with the strap because your elbows aren't bending in this way, your arms aren't able to rotate enough to get you to a point where you can bring the hands together, or you just can't bring the hands together, so it's nice to have something to hold on to. So, as with any posture or any category of posture, we oftentimes isolate one area of the body. In this case, with the binds, I've been talking a lot about the shoulders. But it's an integration of everything else going on. So you have to look at what's going on in the hips. You have to look at what's going on in the spine, in the torso. Are you using your core? And most importantly, because this is yoga, are you using your breath? So I wanted to just break down these binds a little bit more for you today, because I see students really want to attempt these types of variations in their postures. It's a great way to advance your practice, but it's often not taught in a way that we have time in a 60-minute or 75-minute class to break things down about how we can really look at this rotation of the shoulders and everything like that. So I hope that you find this helpful in that regard. And also, I really encourage you to create that space, because even though we're binding and locking kind of everything together, we still want to have that balance of the ease and the effort, the sthira sukha, so that we can breathe freely. We can easily loosen that bind and move to the next posture without kind of rocky transitions. We're kind of trying to develop that smoothness. Even though we're binding, we're not holding on so tight that we can't move. So that's really the challenge. Once you can learn how to bind, can you let go a little bit? Not grip so hard, so tight. I hope that you can explore that in some of your practices this week. Add in these binds, these half binds into your extended side angles or into your twists, even if the teacher doesn't call it. And then let me know if you have any other questions, or I'd love to hear your feedback on how this practice and this exploration went for you in your own practice, be it at home or in the studio. My name is Ashley Josephine, and I hope to see you on or off the mat again soon. Namaste.